to the Next Best Picture podcast, where I'm being joined right now by the Oscar-winning sound designer for A House of Dynamite, Paul N.J. Ottosson, and the film's Oscar-winning editor, Kirk Baxter. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thank you for having us.
I'm really excited to talk with both of you. You guys are responsible for working on some of my favorite films of all time, and your work here is, as always, exemplary. I mean, like, just world class, the kind of stuff that anyone that is studying either film editing or sound work should aspire to at the level that you guys are operating on. And even in a film like this, where maybe nothing goes boom, there's still a lot of excitement to be found in Kathryn Bigelow's latest.
Paul got some booms in there.
Oh, that's true.
One or two. Maybe it's not a standard action movie in that way. It's which I done fair amount of. This is definitely still a serious amount of audio in there, and there's an occasional boom here.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, no, I understand what you mean, for sure. And I'm sure you guys can understand where I'm coming from with that as well. This is a movie.
You're talking about the ending.
Yeah. Which, I'm going to be happy to get into here a little bit, but I really want to know, first and foremost, Kirk, you've never worked with Kathryn before. Paul, I know that you worked with her. You won an Oscar for Zero Dark 30. And just curious to know, oh, and also too, the Hurt Locker as well. Yes. So, Kirk, how did you come on board?
Kathryn tested me on an Apple commercial, Hollywood in Your Pocket. We did a 3-minute commercial. That was her dress rehearsal to see if we could get along.
I mean, obviously, it's not a question of talent. Your work speaks for itself. Just a matter of, is this somebody I want to, go on this venture with, basically?
Yeah, you sort of got to know that if you got to spend a bunch of time together, and does your taste align? Mm-hmm. And if your taste matches, you're in a very good position to help.
Yeah. Now, you get the script from Noah Oppenheim. I know that for both of you, you're combing through the script and probably taking notes as you go here in terms of what you want to do. And I know you both have very different roles here, but can you tell me a little bit about how the two of you eventually intersect and end up working together?
Paul contacted me before I came on. Like, you reached out really early, a couple of times, wanting to talk about it. And I was like, I don't have anything to talk about, Paul. We haven't started.
No, yeah, on my end, I think I read a script about 2 years ago, perhaps.
Wow.
Of course, you haven't started shooting anything. You have really nothing in place. But it gives an opportunity to, dive into it and think about the movie. And, Kathryn is always very realistically ground-based in all her movies. If it's not real, it's not flying. It's just how it is. So you have to do a deep dive. So I read through the script, you take a lot of notes, see what kind of sounds you can use in this world to steer the scenes or enhance them or underscore them. And then we had access to a 3-star general, Dan Carbler. So I would call him before they started shooting the movie, what in this, what is it that I can use with? So we had immense amount of resources to do a deep dive. Of course, at some point, start shooting and Kirk start editing, and we have a more a real tangible conversation about scenes and what we should or should not do.
Yeah. Now, I have to imagine that because there are so many speaking parts and there's a lot of like frantic activity in terms of characters overlaying dialogue across each other, and Barry Ackroyd's camera work, which is also moving around a lot as well. So for both of you, there could be, it's like almost like you have to unravel chaos and make it so that it's not jarring to the audience on both sides of what it is that you do. For you, Kirk, matching Barry's shots from one to the next and making sure that the audience's eyes are where they need to be. And for you, Paul, I would imagine it's all about making sure the proper levels are in place and that also there's like the right degree of not overwhelming the audience sonically.
I mean, I concentrate a lot on eye travel. It's an interesting way to it's interesting to me that you brought it up, but you can stay, there's 3 cameras going plus all the screens that you can go to. So I I can keep things kind of smooth and natural and organic. And, you know, I guess what Kathryn's looking for is realism. So a lot of the time you can sort of create a spell where it feels like it's just being watched or found. But as you're very rapidly going between locations, that's when I concentrate on eye travel. If we're on this side of the screen and, you know, you're over on the left and we go to the next place and you're over on the right. And I try to keep things in a sort of disciplined filmmaking style, but with handheld and chaos and kinetic movement, but still applying those same sorts of structure so that it's easy for the viewer to track, no matter how quick you're going.
Yeah, and I think on the sound side of things, you know, we always tried to unravel it. But when I got the tracks from Kirk to begin with, you know, it's a lot of microphone combined, and that we then try to clear up, sound editing wise, to mix to be able to control all of it in the end of it. But I think we found it was interesting to hear it all kind of messed up a little bit at times. So there wasn't always clarity. Like the first chapters is kind of really about gathering information to get that up the line to the president to make this one, you know, have this one answer for the question in the end there. So we started experiment with actually not being clear necessarily all the time with it. I mean, we could certainly play this completely clear, every single line in the whole movie. But I think it was more interesting to keep you a little bit guessing in some of the scenes, because we had opportunity to play this scene again in another chapter or in the third chapter. So probably when you watch the movie, there's lines that maybe is not as clear in the first chapter or two, intentionally to kind of keep it a little bit messy, like you feel like in the situation. It is not the controlled environment as much as you wish it would be as it starts unfolding.
We experimented a lot with all that repeated dialogue, because some of it, it's not as scripted. We repeated more than what was scripted. Like a fun example is the general kind of going, "How about that, Lindor?" It's all casual in Act 2. And it's so enjoyable that we then sort of got that little bit of dialogue and then we buried it in the first act. And it's not a featured thing. It's just sort of there. So it's an Easter egg that when it repeats, you kind of go, that's, you know, one of the little clues of going, whoa, have we been here before? So all of that sort of stuff was an experiment. How clear do we make it the first time? It's not essential. It's just around. Paul was really good at finding that balance of kind of going, we're teasing here.
Yeah. And also,
I think,
oh yeah, go ahead.
Like I say, along that, you spoke about creating that mess in the situation. I think sometimes we did try to overwhelm you, like as a viewer. Like I think we imagine being in those rooms, and you train this all the time, but at some point it becomes real world, and there's maybe more information coming in that you are used to, and there's another level of that importance of the information. So at times we try to overwhelm you with all this real world sound that could be in this room, to then give you reprieve and quiet in other places. So we try to use a lot of the sounds together with picture editing score to amp up this kind of pressure on the viewer and, you know, the person in the seat to then come back.
It's my take on you know, the acronyms and the speed of how it's all being spoken. Is that does the viewer need to catch every little bit, or do they need to know that they're in a room with experts? Mm-hmm. A little bit of both. And if you slow it down too much to hold everybody's hand, it starts to not feel authentic. And mostly if you're making choices between things, if you're undecided, the general rule with Kathryn is realism.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I think I could, even if I didn't know what they were saying, like if it was a completely different language, the emotion of the performers and the way that the story's being presented could tell the audience everything that they would need to know. It's like going back to the old film 101 days of film school, where you're tasked to tell a story without dialogue. How do you communicate that to the audience? I'm very curious about Noah Oppenheim's screenplay, especially for you, Kirk, because I'm going to take a wild guess and say there wasn't much changes in the editing room structurally. I'm going to take a wild guess and say you followed it to a T.
I followed it really closely in terms of, I mean, the 3-act structure was written. Mm-hmm. In terms of informationally, when scenes play out, it's kind of wide open for how they overlap, because everything's been shot from start to finish in each place. So if you want to be watching in one location and listening in another location, if you want to be hearing someone or with someone talking, or do you want to be in a different place on the screen? All of that stuff's just completely wide open. And in terms of, you just sort of follow Barry's camera work, and like, I want to stay with the general here and not go to the POC, or I want to be in the POC now with everybody listening and looking frightened. And so the lines are blurred with how to tell it, what spell to cast. Then we did actually do a little bit of not so much restructure, but it's repetition. Noah's screenplay was really tight and clean in terms of not wanting to repeat information that the audience knew. He would sort of pick it up from where we left off in the second act and carry on. Whereas when we were doing it, we found a lot of pleasure in experiencing the exact same things from a different perspective. And a good example of that is the president in the helicopter at the end, the whole sort of debrief with the Russians. That was only supposed to be experienced in chapter 2 as the president on the phone, when they say to him, if that's the way you think of it, then your choice is a surrender or suicide. And we elected to sort of, like, Kathryn really wisely filmed that scene in the helicopter instead of just getting the audio. She filmed the performance. So we had the ability to repeat the entire scene again from the president's perspective, and found it riveting still, even though we knew every word of the conversation, because you're sort of feeling his isolation in there during it, or just how unfair the question is that's being asked of him. And to me, what was really critical is getting him on camera saying, at the end of that scene, I need a minute, knowing that there's 2 minutes to go. And then when you say, I need a minute, and you go to Africa, then you got these wide, sort of now sleepy shots. There's a tension applied to them, where you're watching that scene play out, kind of going, you've got 2 minutes, dude. What are you doing? And if you didn't have that scene on camera prior, it sort of slowed down. But it was a fascinating thing. It was a really big soul for that last act. So that's the sort of, I give like 10 out of 10 for that screenplay, but filmmaking is always a sort of push and pull, and, you discover things as you go.
Paul, for you, on those cuts to black at the end of each part of the film, people always talk all the time about how someone like a Christopher Nolan will do these rumbling like bass drops or something to like emphasize the drama of a moment. And I noticed that on these cuts to blacks, there's like that thud kind of like sound that you hear. Can you just tell me just a little bit about like those placements throughout the film to like emphasize those dramatic beats?
Well, I think we underlined some of the dramatic beats, as you say, when we see the ICBM on the screen at the end of the chapters and so on. But I think the low end material is great. It doesn't tell you as much. It just makes you feel this dread. You can feel it in the scene. And there's some parts in the movie with the helicopters landing. We derive it for actually like something real tied to, but just make it almost unbearable.
Yeah.
To give you a reprieve when you get in the helicopter, it's his private space again, and becomes about his choices. So I think that together with a lot of other sound is good, just to overwhelm you a little bit. To then, I think there's a yin and yang, as you call it, these opposites.
Yeah.
To appreciate that silence if you're overwhelmed maybe with all these other sounds in other scenes. So we use these tools to manipulate you in scenes. But also it was a good restart, I think, to a big sound that's non-descriptive really as it trails off. And then we get into another chapter, we can give you a fresh restart again without, telling you too much in that sound, versus having some real world sound describing something across these cuts. So we tended to lean on.
I got a comment with someone that we played the film to at the end of chapter 3, because it was 10 seconds of black when it cuts out on the president waiting for his answer, maybe more. I can't remember exactly. And someone was like, you're going to think the movie's over. And it was a simple response. I was like, oh, Paul hasn't done his thing yet. There's no way you're thinking this is over.
Now, and if you, Paul, like what challenges or logistic challenges are presented when you're having to record these bombers, like especially like I have to imagine that, you know, instead of using any stock material, that's something that you probably get recorded newly for the film. I imagine too, there's got to be cooperation between the filmmaking crew and also, I guess in this case, the United States military. Like, how does that work?
What the bigger challenges are, funny enough, it's not those big things. It's a little bit more like a painting by number, because it tells itself what it is, what it needs, if you need to put in there. I think the bigger challenge is because Kathryn likes a ton of sounds in the movie. She just does. To find all those sounds can be in this room and build them up like something. I don't know how technical your audience is, but we shoot like wall group, like backgrounds actors in the movie to fill out the scenes.
Yeah.
And we usually shoot like one day with this 8 people. We shot 3 days with like 15 people in this. And we shot days where we would do a regular thing, but it just kind of didn't work. So we had Noah, the writer, go back, write whole stories for background actors.
Oh, wow.
People not on the phone, to be able to get the tension in the dialogue. And when they read those lines, it wasn't just arbitrary lines that they asked your phone, hey, really, it sounded like you answered from a pizza store or something. But there's a process in all of this. That was the bigger challenge of building these things that you do not see, but become very important to the movie, to build up these scenes full on tension. So I would say there's, again, the big action movies that I've worked on, it tells itself a little bit more. You see the big shootout, the helicopter, whatever that might be. But in this scene is building things that you do not see.
Yeah.
And so my sound work, I think, is way more script-based than maybe visually based on a movie like this. And I think those challenges are in that it doesn't tell you right away what's going to be. You really have to understand the story. And some of it's a script. And of course, when Kirk cuts the movie, there's a flow in things that tells me a little bit what I think should be in the scenes. But working all together, but finding what that is a bigger challenge on this movie. It's not the one thing you look at that's so challenging.
Not to mention too, you got all these conversations that are taking place over phones, and then also over bad internet connections through not Zoom like this, but yeah, you know what I mean?
It's a lot of fun showing those perspective changes in mid-sentence. I love that stuff when somebody's kind of clear and then bang, they're in a different location, and then Paul's making it a little broken and harder.
Yeah.
I love the sort of speed and the forward momentum that all that stuff creates. There's a challenge in having a movie that once it sort of reaches like tension, which comes pretty quick, you've got to keep that sound pressure up, because it's chaos in those rooms, and you're dealing with a lot of dialogue, but it can't be quiet and still, like everybody's active. So Paul's had to sort of tread that line between constant chatter and constant noise, but hearing the bits we want to hear, plus speakers in the room, plus music on top. Music's another challenge. Like once you sort of bring score in, because you're dealing with a ticking clock.
Yeah,
you've really got to find the ways to pull it out again, so you can use it as a tool when it returns. Silence is one of our sort of biggest friends.
Yeah, and finally,
I love the way we do no score on that first countdown when we're in the Wizard.
Yeah, there's only one phone ringing in that silence there.
Yes.
Then that gets repeated in all this. So that's one of those identifying things. But like Kirk saying, there's just this silence, and I think it's so important in the movie to find these moments.
Yeah. So that first one in the Wizard with that countdown, and you've got Greeley, the bits of audio that we hear confirm all that sort of stuff. Then you pick all of that up, that becomes a fact, and you move that into chapter 2. And that's our sort of tempo of all of those sounds and the phone rings and all those things. Paul carries that in, but now we've got a new set of people that are responding.
Yeah.
And then by the time you get to chapter 3, you've got all of those acts. You can hear all of that on the phone. The president gets all of it, but we've got less visual things to cut to, but the audio has become denser. In the beginning, there's 1,000 things that I can edit to, 70 reactions, 70 screens, 2 locations with multiple people. And then the movie starts to slowly shrink with where you can visually go, but it expands with what you're hearing.
Right.
And something along with that, you saw all those where we got from the big screen, you have all the 9 people on it. All those, none of those green screens. So those are live actors at the time. So everything was recorded at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Also for overlapping, it all happened. The actors sitting in different sets on one bigger set. So when we get in the tracks of that, it is like 25 channels of dialogue. But in those moments, also noises, like I said, this scene when the countdown happens, there'll be stuff that we usually clean out, like people bumping into things. But we use all of that in those scenes to, I think, add this little tension in it. Not necessarily someone speaking, but just these noises to keep things a little bit alive, make it feel very real. But when we spoke about the big challenges, the dialogue in this movie, or how it was recorded, I can't imagine Kirk cutting this, because usually he would get a combine where everything is on one track. So
we still had to dig into it. Like I could work with how it played out in live, let's say like in Stratcom, with how everyone was sort of interplaying live. But then when I would do the real performances, I mean live within the screen, but then when I would put in real performances later in their locations and like big key lines are heard, I want to use the exact same piece of audio that we experienced on the film. So everything's got that same, rhythm and memory. Everything's a fact, not a suggestion. It's so, once I find out what the president's performance on camera is, then we've got to go back and make sure we use all those same bits of audio. And it's the same way for all of the characters. So it was done live to be able to interact live, but then we had to manipulate it to make it all completely authentic.
Yeah, but I think a lot of people think that those are just shot on green screen, inserted afterwards. But it's really like a theater performance, the whole Stratcom bit.
I'm going to walk you guys through my thought process here a little bit when I was watching this for the first time. I've seen it twice at this point, but the first time I'm watching this, the third act is building to its crescendo moment, the same as acts 1 and 2 have done before. You're hanging on every word to see what Idris Elba is going to do. It's literally an impossible decision that he has to make. And the movie pretty much tells the audience, well, yeah, it is impossible because we're not going to exactly tell you what he does. Everybody goes into the bunkers at the end. We know what's about to happen. And no matter what the outcome is, no matter no matter what he chooses, it's bad either way, right? Why do we end on Anthony Ramos?
What's your reasoning?
Okay, so so this is why I set it up like this, because the first time I watched it, I thought because it was a wide shot of him outside and he's obviously like, about to like throw up, he's having a full-on panic attack, I thought maybe I missed something in the sky of the wide shot the first time I saw it, right? Watched it a second time. No, that wasn't the case. Then I thought, okay, maybe it is because the desperation, the hopelessness, the performance conveying that sense of dread is exactly how we should feel as an audience walking then out of the theater. But I would just love to hear from you, like, was there ever was that in the script? Was there a decision-making process as to what should be the final moment to end the film on? I'm curious.
We explored a few things. We loved that performance. We loved that shot. And I also love the reminder that this has all taken place in a very short space of time.
Yeah.
Because we've gone a long way since we saw Anthony or we were at Greeley. And with the journey that the president's taking, et cetera, it's still just that slither in time. It's bringing you back to the impossible situation of how you're going to make a choice, a wise choice, when you have no time to prepare for this and you don't know when it's going to go down. I love the time aspect, the reminder of where we were.
Yeah.
This viewer took, of course, this is Kathryn and Kirk when sitting cutting the picture. But yeah, I love the two for the time aspect to remind us that this was just 18 minutes. You watch the movie in an hour 40, but that's what we have. I also think as an audience, you kind of feel a little bit like that in a way, because I think it's as crazy the scenario we're in this world, and I think people coming out of the movie feel a little bit, I can't believe this is real, and you're going to feel awful.
I almost got the sense too that in a real world scenario, I feel like I would get the Amber Alert after the blast had occurred. You know what I mean? Like that's how fast it all seems to be happening. It's like if you received that Amber Alert on your phone, what do you do? You know, it's like, do you find the nearest basement? Like, what do you do? There's no time.
Yeah, I think the alert she got was only that I think she's going to hide up in a mountain. I don't know that the issue to everybody in the cities, because I think by the time you get down to the point where it's less than 10 minutes, I think, when it's
just those being evacuated.
Yeah. Yes. So the general population, I don't believe
I don't think you're learning anything.
There's no time.
Well, I can tell you, I when I was walking out of this, I remember saying to a friend of mine, this is like the spiritual sequel to Oppenheimer in a way, where, you know, it's everything that movie foresaw and foretold, and now we would see like a scenario of it playing out in real life, and it's just as scary as it was when I saw that movie as it is watching this one. You know, it's almost like just confronting the inevitability of death. You don't want to think about it, but it's always something hovering over you, and this is something that I think has been hovering over us for decades, and we just choose not to think about it, talk about it. But given the current state of the world and tensions where they are, it's a very, it's a more plausible thing that I think people are willing to admit.
I would say we're in a much more precarious situation now than where we were when it was on everybody's mind.
Cold War era.
During the Cold War. Like the hazard of it has escalated dramatically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it is a crazy situation, but I think we are also used to getting questions so we can give answers to and be satisfied with that. We can resolve everything. But I think the way this movie ends is like, it is a question we just don't have an answer for.
Yeah.
And it might not be a real answer in the immediate future either, but we can't also ignore that there's a question we can't possibly answer right now. So I think it asks these questions, and are we comfortable living with these possibilities? Or we're going to try to...
For me, the movie was very educational. I didn't know this myself, just as a punter. It was educational to learn that if somebody does fire a ballistic nuclear missile at us, our ability to stop it is pretty low.
Yeah.
And I always assumed that
we're good.
We were in a better situation.
Yeah. There's oh my gosh, what did it just make me think of? There's a movie from the 90s called Armageddon, and I was just thinking of Billy Bob Thornton's line in that movie where he's like, our budget allows us to cover this percentage of the sky. I'm begging your pardon, sir, but it's a big ass sky. And it's like, I can only imagine, you know, even if you are able to detect on radar and you see something is happening, the reaction time, and then, you know, I love that phrase in the movie, hitting a bullet with a bullet. It really, truly, and also too, they don't have as many chances to take that shot as you would think they would, because there's only so much in the arsenal. So
they're also such incredible speed. I think like 6 miles per second.
That's insane.
It's unfathomable to be able to hit something, period. I mean, if it's 10%, I'll be like, oh, that's pretty great. But the odds of survival, of course, is really none. But
yes, that's another
second.
That's another example of repetition. Bullet with a bullet. It's such a good line. It wasn't. We experienced it in chapter 2. It wasn't script written to be repeated in chapter 3, but we were like, let's repeat it.
Yeah.
Put it on his computer screen and let Secretary Baker get it. But it was written to pick up from where we left off of, Mr. President, let me get you up to speed. But they're all the little things of going, let's keep these repeated nuggets.
Yeah. But really underlines the hopelessness of even trying to shoot this down, that we are in such big trouble with this. That one line.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what can you do other than bring awareness to it, talk about it, at least have it top of mind? You know, maybe it can lead to something, maybe not, but it's better than evading it, you know? So, Gentlemen, thank you for not evading this conversation. I really appreciate having both of you here to talk about this, and big fan of both of your work. I can't wait to see more from each of you in the future. Gentlemen, thank you so much once again. Really, really appreciate it, and best of luck to you in the future.
Thank you so much for having us here.
Take
See
care.
you later.